Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here to guide you down the rabbit hole into the world of psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi. Shelby Hartman is co-founder and editor-in-chief of DoubleBlind. Her work has appeared in Vice, Quartz, the Huffington Post, and Rolling Stone, among others. Shelby worked in broadcast news production for CBC News, covering presidential elections, protests, natural disasters, and other breaking news. Spurred by a passion for print and investigative reporting, she transitioned to magazine writing, working as an editor at Pasadena Magazine and receiving her master's degree in long-form journalism from Columbia University in 2015. Since then, Shelby has worked as a columnist at LA Weekly and an editor at Herb, the largest cannabis media company, with extensive features on post-traumatic stress disorder in the veteran community, the cannabis industry, the psychedelic research boom, and the popularization of ayahuasca. You can follow Shelby on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, or reach out to her directly at DoubleBlind, which is doubleblindmag.com. So I'm going to just share her with you now, the interview we had, and also some extra stuff. So stay tuned.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello and welcome back to the Integration Station. I've got a very special guest here with us today. This is Shelby from DoubleBlind Magazine. So I'm just going to really pass it over to her because everything that she's into is really cool. She's been doing a lot of writing and really creating courses and all types of different things, methods even for growing. I'm going to pass over to her. I think she'll be able to explain a lot better. Yeah, let us know what you're up to, Shelby.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I began my career as a journalist and have worked in many different kinds of newsrooms, reporting on many different kinds of things. But I was lucky in 2015 to have the opportunity to merge my professional, spiritual, and personal trajectories. And I started writing and reporting on cannabis and psychedelics, and one story became another. And one day I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm a psychedelic journalist, which actually made a lot of sense in retrospect because I'd been doing acid and reading existentialism since I was 18 years old. And in 2018, I had the idea for DoubleBlind, which began as a print magazine and still is at its core a print magazine that comes out twice a year that includes poetry, photojournalism, and reported features on all things pertaining to the psychedelic movement, from drug development to indigenous stewardship and beyond. But we've also since then blossomed into a lot more than a magazine. So as you mentioned, we have classes and workshops with, some of the leading voices in the psychedelic movement around growing your own mushrooms, microdosing, large dose psychedelic experiences, how to hold space for others when they're having a psychedelic experience. And it's been just a really beautiful journey and very, very grateful to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. It blows me away, like looking at all of the stuff that you've accomplished in this short amount of time. Like, yeah, you got into it at 18 into like these realms, but really the career started in 2015 and it's just incredible. So tell us some more about, just how each thing unraveled one after the other. You started out in media and stuff, and, if you could just let us know how it all just kind of progressed and, what the inspiration was behind each thing. Because, your passion's strong here. It all does come together,
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned, I began my career as a journalist, and I mean, I was literally working as a producer at CBS News before I graduated college, and I loved journalism because I just loved talking to people and hearing their stories and being out in the world. And I was also very idealistic and wanted to make a difference in the world and fancied journalism as sort of the fourth unofficial branch of our democracy. And then, of course, you know, as I got older and started learning the realities of what it means to work inside a newsroom, you know, had to come to terms with the reality that, you know, it's not quite that simple. But that's to say that, you know, it began with journalism. And when I launched DoubleBlind, it came from a deeply aligned place. You know, it wasn't like I was strategically looking at, oh, well, you know, psilocybin might be decriminalized and look at all these people who are investing in psychedelics. Like, I was meditating in my apartment in New Orleans, had the idea for a print magazine on psychedelics. That was the beginning and the end of the idea. And everything in regards to DoubleBlind has really unfolded organically since then. So, you know, we put our first print magazine into the world. It was a passion project. My mom was sending the magazine from our garage. Like, everyone contributed for free just because I called them up and I was like, hey, I have an idea. I want to contribute. We don't have money. We don't know how we're going to pay to print it. And everyone was like, yeah, I'm in. And then as we started to build an Instagram following just for the purposes of, you know, promoting the magazine, we started hearing from a lot of people who had fundamental questions about how to use psychedelics. Moms who wanted to know about whether it's safe to do psilocybin when they're breastfeeding for their postpartum depression. Veterans who want to go to the Amazon and do ayahuasca, but don't know where to go, don't know if it's safe, don't have the money to go. And we realized that as a result of having reported on psychedelics for Rolling Stone, Vice, and a number of other kind of mainstream outlets before starting DoubleBlind, we had a network of connections to a lot of the leading voices within psychedelics who we'd interviewed in our reporting. And so we saw this beautiful opportunity to connect sort of the general populace who is becoming increasingly curious about using psychedelics for therapeutic reasons or even just to live fuller lives with this network of sources that we had connected to through our reporting. So that was really kind of the birth of our second pillar of DoubleBlind, which has become our education, our classes, our workshops, our webinars. And we've been really lucky too that, you know, we've been able to create this ecosystem whereby the proceeds from our education go back into funding our journalism and making that possible. As someone who worked in a variety of newsrooms my whole career, I think I was really, it was really hard for me to see how much people are struggling to figure out how to monetize meaningful storytelling. We never got into this to get rich, but yeah, we have to pay to print the magazine. We have to pay our writers. We have to pay the photographers. Like, we have to pay people, right? And we never wanted to hide sponsored content, taking money from brands we don't believe in, selling things that, you know, aren't going to actually help people in their lives. And so we've been really lucky as well, just from a business perspective, to be able to create a model that is genuinely aligned with our values and lifts up our community and also enables us to fund our journalism and publish all of our journalism online for free without a paywall.
Yeah, that's incredible. So one of the things that I just love about what you're saying here too is that you were listening to your audience, the people that are on Instagram following your content. You're listening to them and you're like, oh wow, here's another idea. Now that I've sat and meditated somewhere, now I'm gonna make courses. Like, you know, it is organic, but it all really just feeds, and it's beautiful. I love that you're coming back to like these most simple integrative concepts through the entire journey. 'Cause life is a trip, like let's face it, you know. And yeah, so you were listening to these questions and you've made many different courses. You did one on maternity. I think that's one of the newest ones there. You've also done some on growing and some on trip sitting. And what are some of the others? I do have them here. I could share screen too at the same time, but maybe you could explain some of the ways that you're educating now. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, so our most popular course is our mushroom growing course. It's been just really, really beautiful to experience launching this course, and we've taught thousands of people around the world how to grow mushrooms. We have a team of 5 mycologists who support people live in a Discord channel. You can see there we also have an intermediate course, which we launched for folks who, once you learn the basics of, inoculating your substrate, picking your spores, etc. How do you kind of advance to the next level, create spore prints, bulk out your grow, use different kinds of substrates. So that has been a really wild and fun journey. People just get addicted to growing mushrooms. They feel really intimidated by the process in the beginning. We hear from a lot of people who are like, I don't even have a green thumb. Like, I kill every plant I've ever purchased. And it's like, no, actually, growing mushrooms is not that difficult if you have the right support. And it's such a mystical way to cultivate a deeper relationship with what you put into your body and your medicine. And I will also add, by the way, that it's really important to us that people have all the resources they need to heal. So while all the proceeds from these courses do go directly back into funding our journalism, which is no easy feat, we also never lock anyone out of anything. So we have scholarships. If folks can't afford to enroll in these classes, they can just email us, scholarships@doubleblindmag.com, and we'll enroll them in the course. So we never lock anyone out of anything we do. But yeah, we, you mentioned we have a psychedelics and maternity course, which, I was worried was going to be taboo, or we were going to get blowback from that. But, it covers everything from tracking your cycle to becoming pregnant, to coping with postpartum depression and reintegrating back into your life as a new parent, to coming out to your kids and your community about your psychedelic use, breaking cycles of intergenerational trauma and beyond. And this course was birthed after I was speaking at a conference, or moderating a panel at a conference run by a guy his name's Reggie, but he goes by Oakland Hyphae on Instagram, with a bunch of just badass moms who have been supporting other moms on their journeys with psychedelics. And again, like, sort of our philosophy at DoubleBlind is, don't tell the kids not to have sex, give them condoms. Like, the reality is that, we're all for FDA approved research. There's a lot of really amazing progress happening in the realm of federally approved clinical trials to get psychedelics on the market as medicines. But we also know that there are literally millions of people who are suffering today who are going to do a psychedelic, like, regardless of whether or not it's approved by the FDA. And we want to be able to support those people by telling them what we know, what we don't know, and just helping them as best as we can. So that's really the intention behind our education. We're always harm reduction first, and we're always clear with folks, like, we're not doctors. We can't, promise you that there are no contraindications with the medicines you're on or anything else. So with that kind of stuff, we do refer people to therapists and MDs and stuff who are experts in psychedelics. But these courses serve as a foundation for people who really are just beginning to embark on their journey and want to understand the fundamentals.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And you hit on so many amazing points. I remember when I found out that I was pregnant, I definitely thought that it was a gift from the mushrooms. Like, all the work that I was doing, I had just gotten back from South America. I was starting to do trip sitting and all that. But right after, I had this like epiphany come over me of like, oh my God, this is like illegal. Now I have to stop being who I am and start being responsible or whatever, and, I wish that this support was out there at the time, because I took a big break off of my own passions. I've come full circle. I'm glad that, I see that all that part needed to come into play. But it's really nice to know that it's here now for others, because, it is important to not only share the disclaimers on shows like this, but in general have that sense of security inside of yourself as you're moving forward, to have that support system in place as well. So what are some other ones? Oh, yeah, you can continue.
I was just agreeing with you. I don't have anything else to say.
I went into one. So tell us some more that you've got here. How to use psychedelics in general. Is that like the one that you're talking about for veterans with PTSD, or is this for anybody in general?
Yeah, so how to use psychedelics is our course on large dose, how to start exploring whether a large dose psychedelic experience is right for you. So it covers the most popular psychedelics, which are psilocybin, mushrooms, LSD, DMT, ketamine, and MDMA. And it gets into the various clinical studies that have been done into these compounds and what conditions that they've shown promise for and what the difference in experiences are between them. Oh, it also talks about ayahuasca, and it gets into dosage, what the experience itself might be like, the duration of the experience, where you might be able to have a legal and or supported experience with these medicines, if that's something that you feel is important. And then it also gets into all the fundamentals around how to prepare for, navigate, and integrate a psychedelic experience. So things like set and setting, which we talk about a lot in the psychedelic community, but maybe not everybody is familiar with. The mindset that you go into a trip with, as well as your environment, are really key in how the psychedelic experience will unfold. How you decide who you're going to trip with, what kind of music you want to listen to while you're tripping. We have recommended playlists, we have breath work, we have mindfulness meditations that were created specifically for this course by mindfulness teacher Nate McCannion, which are people can listen to before, during, and after their psychedelic experiences. So at the end of the day, it's like psychedelics are not for everyone. They're not going to heal all of your problems overnight, but we do feel like if someone feels called to have a psychedelic experience, it really begins with understanding the basics of what this experience might look like, and if it's really a good time in your life to have this kind of experience.
What advice would you give to anybody just starting? Like, this is a cannabis show originally. They just brought me on because I'm the gentle one. I'm like, let's talk about psychedelic integration. There's more shows coming onto this network now that are like more psychedelic, mushrooms, getting into their niches. But for anybody who's just in the cannabis space, not really familiar with psychedelics, what would be your greatest, advice from this course that you could share? I know it's hard to draw there.
Yeah, I think that deciding to have a psychedelic experience is a deeply personal choice. And what we hear a lot from folks who attend our workshops and our classes and things is they want us to give them definitive answers. They're like, should I do shrooms or should I do LSD? Like, should I go to a ceremony or should I trip with my friends? Should I trip alone or should I trip with other people? And it's like, these are not questions that anyone can answer for you. These are questions you have to answer for yourself. And it begins by getting silent, like stepping away from Instagram, stepping away from every single opinion that there's no shortage of opinions out there. So if you talk to integration therapists, you talk to your friends, you talk to your family, like everyone's going to have a different opinion. But ultimately you have to decide what's right for you. And that begins by getting silent and making the space and time to truly do that. Go into nature, take a hike, journal. It all begins with the question, why do you want to have this experience? What are you hoping that this experience is going to do for you?
Yeah, part of set and setting, I think, really is that intention setting. And the best way to do that is just be present with yourself, do some of that contemplation, sometimes I feel like it's easier to get to the meditative space once you've tried psychedelics, but there is always that contemplation. No matter what, we can sit there silently and just observe our thoughts and move through it. It may not be the same as a Buddhist style meditation, but it's definitely a way to get started and start setting that intention and start training your brain to to be prepared for what's coming. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So what about the trip sitting one? This is kind of, I guess, for anybody who's already been working with the medicines, but now their friends are asking them, hey, I'm a little scared to go with these big doses. Can you guide us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, our trip sitting course is one of our most popular courses. It was taught by these amazing, amazing longtime facilitators, space holders, Tony Moss and Sky Weaver. And basically, all of our courses and all of our free articles and absolutely everything we do is driven by our community. It's driven by what people say that they want us to do and what they feel their needs are. And one of the biggest questions that we get from people is, where can I find an underground therapist, or where can I find an underground ceremony? And it's like, we can give people, information on how to mitigate risk when having these experiences. We can connect people with community around these experiences. We cannot tell you where to get the drugs, and we cannot refer you to people that are doing things underground that are illegal, because that's a liability for DoubleBlind, unfortunately. Additionally, when it comes to finding an underground therapist, I mean, we have a really amazing guide that's for free on our website called How to Vet Your Psychedelic Guide that was written by reporter Michelle Janikian that I recommend everyone reads. But there's a lot of risk to sitting with someone in the underground, because there have been cases, I mean, in the worst case scenarios of people being sexually assaulted and stuff. But, also there's a lot of cases of people feeling like they just didn't really get what they wanted out of the experience. The person didn't support them in the right kind of way, didn't make them feel comfortable. So this is all to say that there's a really big need out there for people to feel supported when they're actually having these experiences. They want to have these experiences, but they're afraid. They're afraid of doing it alone, and they want support. And so this course really came from a place of, how can we give people some basic information on how to, it's both for trippers and prospective trip sitters, to explore whether holding space or asking like a loved one to hold space for you is the right thing at this moment in your life. And again, like disclaimers here, like this course does not teach you how to be a therapist. It does not teach you how to be a shaman. It does not teach you how to hold space professionally underground, but it does give you a template for having really important conversations with loved ones before you decide to hold space for them. Things like, where are you at in your life before you decide to hold space for another person? It's really important when going into holding space that you're in a grounded place yourself, because all kinds of things can happen, at the risk of stating the obvious, during a psychedelic experience. People can cry, trauma can emerge, they can scream, they can laugh, they can want to take their clothes off. Like, you have to really, truly be grounded in yourself, like be rested, have your own shit locked up before you come into that container. How do you have conversations ahead of time around consent? Like, does the person want to be touched? If so, how? Are you going to ask them ahead of time? Like, is it okay? Would you like me to hold your hand? Would you like a hug? Would you like a grounding touch on your feet? So basically really just providing people with a template for success and assessing not how to trip sit, but firstly, whether you should be trip sitting at all. And then if the answer is yes, how you do that in a way that's responsible and mitigates risk.
Yeah. Things. I think the only thing that I knew of before this that had any teachings on that was the Zendo project for the Burning Man festival, and what you're offering is like way more in depth than like a small manual, which was like the only existing educational content you could get. Yeah, I'm excited to share more of what you're doing within our community. I didn't know that you were responsible for so much until I really started looking into it, and I'm really glad I did. So what are the most common fears that normally come up in these years of you working professionally? What's some stuff that you've heard?
Fears around what?
Around doing the big macrodose experience, sorry. The heroic doses or anything the big trips.
I would, for sure, I would say the biggest fear that people have is of the, quote, bad trip. And so that's just a conversation that really needs to be reoriented, in our opinion, because in the psychedelic community, generally speaking, people don't really like the word bad trip because it implies that there is such a thing as a psychedelic experience that wasn't worthwhile, or that was just like all in all a net negative. And when in reality, our perspective is if, and the if is a very important disclaimer, the psychedelic is done in an appropriate context, meaning, the person went in intentionally, they prepared, they had the right support, they made sure to test their drugs if they were doing a synthetic like LSD or MDMA, and that's a big if. Then whatever it is that emerges during the psychedelic experience isn't bad per se. It might be challenging, but the general philosophy is that those challenging experiences are really just bringing things to the surface that live within you already that needed to be processed. Psychedelic, psychedelos, etymologically means mind manifesting. So there's this idea, right, that like if you're experiencing something uncomfortable, that's something that lives within you already that kind of needed to come out, needed to be processed so that you could heal it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've definitely had some of those quote unquote bad trips myself, but there was always something amazing to get out of it. Even if it was just, Alice in Wonderland slaying the Jabberwocky. It's like I faced it. I at least know that there's a Jabberwocky there. Next time, or through the integration work, I'm going to slay this thing so I'm prepared the next time going into Journey, or, something along those lines. But you do have to face it, and sometimes it is confusing. I was often more of like the shamanic tripper. I like the big doses and I like them alone. But I do see the value of having people around you if you're scared of those things. I wasn't scared of them. I had a different mindset going in. But there's a lot of benefits, and I was asked many times before it was even a thing to sit with people, and it definitely does take that preparation for yourself to be able to hold that space too. It's like the grieving process. I was just with a family that's grieving right now, and I had to get out all my stuff because I knew the person who lost their life too. So I had to get out all my stuff before I could even show up there. Because it's like I had to be the filter, and it's very much like that, I think, with the trip sitting. But this is like, life is a trip, we're prepared for all this stuff in our regular life. And we use our, almost like the psychedelics to integrate our life. And then we have to use life to integrate the psychedelics afterwards. But, yeah. So tell us some more about growing medicine. I know you're mainly talking about growing mushrooms here, but in addition to mushrooms, like what's your take on just growing medicine in general and sourcing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm trying to figure out how to be mindful about this. I was going to say, I'm not going to say that I'm going to be supportive of like all people everywhere growing their own medicine or making their own medicine just because, it is still federally illegal. And I think that it's a deeply personal choice whether someone wants to take that risk or not. And I'm not an attorney. that being said, generally speaking, we definitely encourage people to be mindful about where they're sourcing their medicine from, just the way that we would be encouraging people to be mindful about where they source like their soap or their produce from. And if they are taking a synthetic medicine like MDMA or LSD or ketamine, we encourage them to test their drugs by buying a testing kit through the nonprofit DanceSafe. In regards to like the medicine that you choose, I would say that it should definitely start by going on the website Grow Medicine, which is a part of the Indigenous Medicine Conservation Fund. And they have a lot of really important education there around the sustainability of certain plants, psychoactive plants and fungi. For example, they're recommending that people who do not have an ancestral tie to peyote do not do peyote at all right now, because the cactus is at risk of endangerment. So if you're interested in doing a mescaline-containing cacti, you might consider San Pedro, for example. With 5-MeO DMT, the psychoactive substance that comes historically from the Insulus alvarius frog, formerly called the Bufo alvarius frog. Those frogs are also, being poached essentially in their natural habitats. And so it's recommended that if you're interested in having a 5-MeO experience, that you do synthetic 5-MeO. Ibogaine as well, like iboga is being poached primarily by Cameroonian poachers in Gabon. So if you're going to go to an ibogaine clinic, like, we want to know where the source of the ibogaine is coming from. So these are just the kinds of questions that you want to be asking yourself when you're engaging with these medicines. With LSD and mushrooms, it's not as much of an issue, but regardless of what kinds of psychedelic substance that you're doing, we do encourage people to think about this concept of indigenous stewardship or reciprocity. And if you have the means, how you can give back to basically the indigenous stewards of these plant medicine traditions. Because even if you're doing a psychoactive substance that was, say, synthesized by someone of, European descent, like a 2CB, which was synthesized by Alexander Shulgin or MDMA or something like that, we do know that, the ways in which containers are held, the ways in which we understand the psychedelic experience, in terms of intentionality, like in terms of being intentional about how you engage with these substances, like a lot of that has been carried through from indigenous lineage. And so, some of the ways that people can engage with indigenous reciprocity include not only going on Grow Medicine, but also taking a look at the North Star Ethics Pledge and signing that. DoubleBlind has signed that. Supporting nonprofits like the Shakruna's Indigenous Reciprocity Initiative, or if you're doing mushrooms, you could consider making a donation to Esperanza Mazateca, which is the nonprofit that's based in Huautla de Jimenez, which is where Maria Sabina's family comes from. The Mazatec peoples are considered, some of the longest time sort of like stewards of psilocybin mushrooms. So these are just the kinds of conversations that we want to be having, and we want to encourage people to be having with their friends. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'm going to stop here just so we can share some of our sponsors and some of the wonderful work that they're doing too. And then I'd love to have you back, and we'll dig into what some of the psychedelics are and some other information we can dig in around them. Okay. I'll see you in a few minutes. Bye.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Who has huge buds? You do. If you shop at BMA Hydroponics, attend one of BMA's educational seminars and learn the secrets of growing, harvesting, processing, and consuming quality cannabis and cannabis products. Learn how to make better extracts, edibles, and medicinal creams at prices you can afford. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive, Belleville, or call 613-967-9888.
The only way to go. Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch, yes, watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Welcome back, Shelby. Welcome back, everyone. So for this little part, I wanted to dig into the psychedelics themselves. I'd love to hear personally a little bit about your story, where you started, what other medicines you've worked with along the journey, and how they've called to you. But in between, I'll probably ask some questions for our listeners so that we can get a little bit more clarity about what they are and things like that.
Yeah, so about my personal psychedelic experience, and then what else? Sorry.
Yeah, let's just start with there. Like, where did you start? What was your first experience? What other medicines have you worked with? And then I'll probably just ask questions to get more clarity around along the way.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I did mushrooms for the first time when I was 18 in college, and I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. My friends just had some, and we did them in our college dorm, and very quickly realized that I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But they kind of blew open my world. I did mushrooms at the same time that I was taking a class on philosophy at Bard College and was discovering existentialism for the first time. So Kierkegaard, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, etc. And really just prompted me to ask sort of these classic psychedelic, youthful, angsty, existential questions around like, what's the meaning of life? And, what are my values and what have I inherited versus what's universally true? And is there such a thing as objective truth, et cetera, et cetera. And just from there kept tripping probably once every 6 months or so on mushrooms and acid, and at some point discovered MDMA along the way. I don't remember when I did MDMA for the first time, probably at Burning Man, but I've never been what I would consider to be a psychonaut, so certainly not like a deep psychonaut. I've really just stuck to mushrooms, cannabis, MDMA, and LSD 2 or 3 times a year from between the ages of 18 and 25. And then when I was 25, I sat with ayahuasca for the first time and have drank ayahuasca probably 12 times. Since starting DoubleBlind, I've tried a few more psychedelics just because, a lot of people offer stuff to me and I'm like, that sounds interesting. I've tried, 2CB, ketamine, although I've never had a formal ketamine treatment in a clinic or anything like that. Changa, DMT vape pen, done hape, combo. So just a smattering of this and that.
Yeah.
I did 5-MeO DMT ones. But I would say that for me, ayahuasca and mushrooms have been my most profound psychedelic experiences. I've gone pretty deep on both of those medicines.
Yeah. I love that, when that's the word that makes it your favorite. I went deep. It's so powerful. And it's kind of what we want when we're going on these. I also love what you said too, just the synchronicity of taking those courses that teach you how to ask questions, and then you go to the teacher to ask the question. It worked out great.
Totally.
So when you talk about going deep with mushrooms, like what is that like? What kind of doses were you taking?
I'm very sensitive, so I don't need a lot to send me to a place where I basically can't open my eyes and have lost perception of space and time, and I'm experiencing like deeply classic psychedelic, symptoms. I don't know if symptoms is the right word. So for me, like between 2 and 3 grams will definitely get me there. I have had some experiences on an 8th. One time I did 12 grams. That was crazy. But for the most part, I feel like, everyone is different and it depends on really what you're wanting to experience. But for me, when I go into a psychedelic experience, I am looking to shift my perspective, access things I can't normally access through my normal lens of perception. Oftentimes I'm going in with some kind of intention around like clarity or healing something. So I don't need to do like 5+ grams of mushrooms to get there personally. If someone else wants to do that or feels like they need to do that, like again, as long as they are being respectful to themselves and others, doing it in a responsible way, like I'm all for it. But I've just never found that necessary personally.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Because, sometimes we have people on and that's what they're saying is like, for them, even a microdose is these big doses, but you're really pointing out this bio-individuality. And yeah, we all have it. I'm the same way. I can take even like, especially for microdoses, I've OD'd them on still being under 1 gram. And I'm like, how did this even happen? Now I have to take the day off. So
I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah. With ayahuasca, what kept you coming back? What was that like even the first time? Did you go into the Amazon? And then what kept you coming back? I'm curious on both of those fronts.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been to the Amazon once. Otherwise, all my ceremonies have been underground in the US. I did ayahuasca for the first time in 2015. I was referred to a ceremony by a dear friend who just told me that, she sat with the medicine and we had tripped on other psychedelics before. And she was like, oh my God, you have to experience this. And I was like, okay. And yeah, I mean, for me, ayahuasca has a very different spirit than mushrooms. I experience it really differently. I mean, obviously, that's all the classic psychedelic symptoms of distortion of space and time and, seeing visuals and things like that. But to me, the mushrooms, hard to explain unless you've experienced it. But for me, I feel like mushrooms have almost like a comedic energy. I mean, they can be very dark as well, and they can take you into those shadows. But with ayahuasca, I do experience her like a feminine spirit, and I do experience her as sort of wily and surgical. So I experience her as almost like this snake spirit that kind of weaves its way through my body and through my mind and aligns things almost like gauges, like snaps things back into place, or like shifts things and moves things like within my body and spirit that need to be moved. She can be very seductive. It's just, I understand, again, it's hard to explain unless you've experienced it, but I do understand why people refer to ayahuasca as like mother or grandmother, because that's how I've experienced her. Stern, strict, no bullshit, but also like very sort of, can be also like very gentle and intuitive.
So for going back, and is it to build this relationship over time? Is that why you keep drinking the brew?
Oh, I mean, so just to be perfectly honest, like I haven't sat in an ayahuasca ceremony since February of 2020 when I went to the Temple of the Way of Light. And that's because I personally have had a lot of really dark, scary experiences on ayahuasca, and there's a lot of fear for me around going back to the medicine. At the same time, I would say that, as I sort of referenced before when you were asking about, like, you know, advice for someone who's interested in having a large dose psychedelic experience, I do think that, like, in moments of quietude, when I'm meditating or journaling, like, the spirit of ayahuasca calls me, and I just know that there's still a lot more wisdom there within that medicine for me, to heal my traumas, to heal the parts of my life that still feel like they're not perfectly aligning. So it really is just like a deeper calling, like a gut level intuitive calling that, like, there's more for me there. And I know that I will go back when the time is right. But it needs to be from a place of feeling like I'm ready to do the work ahead of time in terms of fully preparing, and also that I'm ready to go in with my eyes wide open as to what the experience might entail, and fully surrendering and trusting the medicine to let the journey unfold as it's meant to. For me, like, over and over, I've gone back because I've, like, had those moments, like, with myself when I'm sitting in silence where I just feel called to have the experience again. But that hasn't been the case for the last 3 years.
Yeah. Sometimes there's just a lot of the integration work to go around, you know. I feel that too with certain medicines, like they're still with me even when I'm not using it. It's like, oh wait, I'm still here. I'm still, like, guiding you. I don't know how to really explain it, but it comes through just all of a sudden. It's like that feeling's back. It's not that the trip's back or that you're in the trip. It's that feeling of, like, guidance, that feeling of, just direction, or, hard to put your finger on it, but it is with you. And I'm curious, since Kambo's one of my favorite medicines, is that how you were introduced to Kambo, was through ayahuasca, or was that separate?
Tangentially. I mean, I hadn't heard of Kambo until I drank ayahuasca and started interfacing with a lot of plant medicine people, because I discovered ayahuasca before I started DoubleBlind. Like, I started DoubleBlind in 2018. I drank ayahuasca for the first time in 2015. So I would say that up until 2015, like, I'd been to Burning Man, I'd done a lot of psychedelics, but there's a lot of different factions within the psychedelic community, and the burners who are going to raves and doing, like, MDMA and mushrooms and LSD, is a very different type of community than, like, the plant medicine folks who, you know, many of whom don't drink alcohol or even smoke cannabis, who are spending time in Costa Rica and Peru and other parts of the jungle and engaging with, you know, basically indigenous medicines. Ayahuasca is the most well-known one, but there's a family of indigenous medicines that people use in those circles, including, like, Hape, Bobinsana, you know, the list goes on. And so, for me, I think it was probably like my second or third ayahuasca ceremony where, it was, we drank in the night on a Friday night. And then that Saturday, I was just hanging out with the facilitators. We were going to have another ceremony that night. And one of the facilitators pulled out some combo and asked if the facilitators wanted to do the combo. They weren't offering it to the participants, but I just happened to be sitting with them hanging out. And I was like, oh, what's that? You know? And then one of the facilitators I ended up really connecting with, and he's an amazing combo practitioner based in San Diego. And I just felt really connected to him. He seemed like someone who was just incredibly present and kind and wise. And, you know, it was a result of meeting him and hearing about his work with combo and how it changed his life that I felt called to have a combo experience. So it wasn't for a couple years after that I think I went to San Diego and had my first combo experience with him. But that was really great. It's obviously a very, very different medicine than ayahuasca. It's not one that people talk about as much. And, it's really nothing. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'll just tell your listeners, it is absolutely nothing like LSD or mushrooms or any of these more classic psychedelics. And also the therapeutic and, physiological potential of combo is really different too. So it can help with depression, in the same way that like ayahuasca, mushrooms, etc. can, but it also has shown potential for autoimmune conditions, inflammation within the body. Conditions like Lyme disease, Hashimoto's. So it's a really very, very different medicine from ayahuasca.
Yeah. Some people don't even consider it in the psychedelic space, but it's definitely mind manifesting. I think one of the reasons why they don't put it in the same category is because of the legality, but I could be wrong there. There's probably many other reasons, ethnically sourcing it and stuff too, because there's only one place you can't grow a frog, and you can't breed them anywhere else either because they won't produce the same medicine. So there's a lot of reasons, I think, why they do keep it separate. But it's also in those circles, as you're talking about, there's a lot of different medicines that go around. And some of them they're all psychoactive, I think, in a way, but they're not all psychedelic hallucinations.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So what are some that are legal ones? Because I know you talk about kava and stuff being legal as medicine. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and then also some of the ones that are that you can access in the psychedelic state without actually taking psychedelics.
Yeah, totally. So I have become really passionate about herbalism and Chinese medicine, and something that we are trying to encourage people to think about more at DoubleBlind is not creating these distinctions between plants and fungi that are psychedelic and psychoactive and ones that are not, because in our opinion, like, it's all medicine, it all comes from the earth. And so with that said, there are many herbs and that have psychoactive properties. Kava is one of them, and it's restricted in some places like Canada, but, is legal in the United States, and it's been used for many generations in the Polynesian islands in a ceremonial context and in rituals and at celebrations, and is very powerful for anxiety. And so I love kava. I drink it probably too much, honestly, because it's not great for your liver, but I drink it almost every night. And if you drink a little, like a cup or two of it, it can just really help with your anxiety, help with sleep. It's great as an alcohol alternative. If you drink a lot of it, it can start to make you feel kind of high. Other psychoactives that are, really powerful, blue lotus flower can be used for lucid dreaming. Trying to think of other herbs. I mean, I'm not an herbalist, but I really do think that something I've been playing with, when curanderos and curanderas train to hold ayahuasca ceremonies, they go into the jungle for what's called a dieta, which is a period of time in isolation in the jungle where they're really just consuming plants. And I actually think it's really interesting to consider, what is it to build a relationship with a particular plant? And you can literally do a dieta with chamomile if you want. People think of chamomile. If you just buy Stash at Albertsons, you're basically getting the hot dog of chamomile, but the whole flower fresh from an herbal shop, even just drinking making a big mason jar of chamomile and drinking that every day, it can help so much with your anxiety, with dehydration, with your digestive system. So I'm just saying, there's a lot to consider as you start building relationships with plants and not stacking so many plants and fungi on top of one another that you don't even know what you're taking and what's doing what. So that's my whole like getting off the soapbox now about herbalism, but that's to say there's like a lot there. And we have we've done webinars on herbalism, which can be accessed through our membership library if you become a DoubleBlind member. We also have articles on our website about herbs that can support you before, during, and after your psychedelic experience. In terms of like legal psychedelics, obviously, ketamine is a medicine that a lot of people are doing for depression, anxiety, PTSD, etc. You can go to a ketamine clinic. They're all across the United States. There's also a growing number of companies like Mind Bloom, Wonder Med, Better You that are sending people ketamine lozenges in the mail to do at home. We did an article on that recently. There's some controversy around that modality and whether that's like a responsible way to do ketamine,
medicine.
But it's basically the intention is to make ketamine more accessible, because going to a ketamine clinic and doing a series of 6 treatments, which is usually what's recommended via IV or IM, can be in the thousands of dollars, not usually covered by insurance. And then trying to think what else. Combo is legal. We definitely recommend like vetting up your combo practitioner. You definitely want to be with someone really seasoned for that kind of experience. I mean, you could probably help me out here. I'm sure I'm blanking. But salvia is legal. But
one that comes up is wild daga. Have you ever tried that? Wild daga?
Mixed reviews on that. Morning glory seeds, LSA, which is similar. Some people say is similar to LSD, also legal, but I would be careful with that one. Some people experience really bad trips on that, including nausea. It can be pretty severe on LSA seeds. So there's a lot. What did you ask me about?
Wild daga.
Never heard of that.
It's from Africa. And it's like their version of cannabis. I think they grow cannabis there as well. But it's like this fluffy flower, almost like mullein, but orange. Another word for it would be like, I think lion's tail, but it really does. It gets you a little elevated like the cannabis would. And I'm pretty sure is legal in most areas. The LSA seeds, you can do, morning glory. Also the Hawaiian baby wood rose. We had somebody on talking about that one for LSA too. So, I don't know if that's legal or illegal though.
LSA seeds are legal, but I don't know if they're legal to consume. And that's like where we get into a lot of tricky legal territory, because there's a lot of stuff that is like you can purchase it legally in certain forms, but then if you start like turning it into something consumable or actually consuming it, then it technically becomes illegal. So like with psilocybin spores, they're legal in 48 states, or I'm going to say 48 states. All states except for Georgia, Idaho, and California, but not legal to grow. As soon as you actually start growing them, you're doing something illegal. Same with like the Mimosa hostilis root, which is often what's used to make NN-DMT. Mimosa hostilis root, you can just order it online. San Pedro cactus, you could buy at Walgreens or Walmart or Home Depot. They sell them everywhere. They grow natively in California all over the place. But as soon as you start making it into a drug and consuming it, you're now doing something illegal. So these are all, it's all just a very kind of tricky time from a legal and regulatory perspective. And it's up to everyone to just go in with their eyes wide open, understanding what the risks are.
Yeah. Yeah, poppies are another one. We grow them everywhere, but it's you scratch it for a pain medication and you're in trouble. Tobacco too, I found it's illegal, and yet, you can buy it legally. So it's a weird one as well. It's like as long as you buy it and it's regulated, but if you try to grow it, no.
I didn't know that actually. That's interesting.
Yeah. We still do. I'll say I'm Native American, that's why my mom is. I can get away with it, but it's not, I think anybody should be able to say that we all are, it's there. Yeah, we could probably talk on the legalities quite a bit, but I want to really make use of our time here. And I was still curious, what are some of the other ways to reach these psychedelic states without actually taking psychedelics? For anybody who isn't ready yet or wants to have the experience to prepare themselves, what are some of the other ways?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of the most powerful ways for sure to reach a psychedelic state without a psychedelic is breath work. Specifically the Wim Hof method or holotropic breath work, which was popularized by kind of the well-known psychedelic therapist Stan Grof. When Richard Nixon signed the Controlled Substances Act in 1970 and made most psychedelics illegal, he really started popularizing holotropic breath work as an alternative. And people, they cry, they have breakthroughs, they see visions, all kinds of crazy stuff can happen just through the power of your breath. And the beauty of it is that if you start to feel really overwhelmed, you can just stop breathing and the experience ends, which obviously is not the case with the psychedelic. There's a lot of technologies that are coming out now that are intended to kind of mimic the psychedelic experience, virtual reality experiences that are supposed to make people feel like they're on ayahuasca. There's all kinds of apps out there that, basically flash and are supposed to, through the flashing, you look into some light on your phone and it's supposed to give you hallucinations. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there these days, but I truly can't speak to the efficacy of these experiences. I can tell you that, whenever I've tried any of these things, it's trippy for a few minutes, but I never have an emotional breakthrough or feel like it's, given me any kind of deep healing that I was looking for. People love isolation tanks as well. In terms of preparing for the psychedelic experience, at the risk of sounding like cliche, I really recommend that people take a look at just the fundamental pillars of their lives. And if they consider themselves to be living healthy lives, what does your sleep look like? How much water are you drinking? What are you eating? How does your digestive system feel? Are you spending time with loved ones? Sometimes it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, because a lot of times people know that they're engaging in unhealthy patterns that are keeping them trapped in a certain ways of feeling and thinking, and they feel like they can't get out of them. And that's why they feel called to a psychedelic experience, to kind of give them that fuel or that perspective that they need to break those habits. But also at the same time, if you already kind of know that there's some fundamental areas of your life that you could improve on that could make you feel better, maybe take a look at whether you do feel like you have the will and the support to make some progress in those areas before going into a psychedelic experience. Because I mean, if you're not sleeping and you're not drinking water, and at the risk of being too blunt, you're not pooping well every day, having a good poop, I mean, I don't know, not all the ayahuasca in the world is going to fix that. You know what I mean? It's really good to take an honest assessment. It's really good to take an honest assessment of your life and come back to the basics in the preparation for a psychedelic experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad you said it. Yeah, I make my clients do poop charts. I don't care. It's only weird if you make it weird. It's really important, I
oh my gosh.
I showed my son. He doesn't like it. He's more weirded out by it than any client that I've had. Make sure your pee's the right color. But yeah, I'm glad that you said all that. You really do have to come back to the basics. Another one's sunshine, are you going outside every day,
Yeah. And it's hard. We understand that it's hard. People are suffering. They're lonely. They're confused. They feel like they don't have the support they need. And that's truly why DoubleBlind exists. And there's a lot of places people can find community. So I'm not saying you have to become a part of the DoubleBlind community, but I am saying that this is our reason for existing, is to support people on their journeys to becoming well. Our membership, the breath works and the cannabis ceremonies and everything that we do together, the integration sessions we have together are so beautiful. And it's amazing how much just showing up and being in community and feeling safe enough to say, like, I'm lonely or I didn't sleep well last night can make a difference in a person's life.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to cut to our sponsors. I know you're tight on time today, so I'll cut here and then I'll have you right back and we'll do a little wrap up together, okay? Thank you, Shelby.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Growing your own cannabis is easier than you think. Whether you're growing for recreational or medical purposes, BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. From the standard 4-plant recreational systems to the latest cutting-edge hydroponic equipment, BMA can customize your package and do it at discount prices. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville and ask us for a free estimate. Or call 613-967-9888 and we will give you an estimate over the phone.
The only way to go.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Welcome back. Welcome back, Shelby. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so we just got a few minutes left here. I really want to get to how it is that everybody can reach you. But before we do, just if we could get another note on this taking responsibility, like in our sourcing, in our intentions, in our, finding that practitioner or trip sitter. Once we have that, there comes like this point following the experience of really coming or of giving back. So if you could touch on that, like the sourcing, the giving back, and then get into how people can assist you in your way of giving back. I think that would be great.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, I think as mentioned before, I would really point folks just towards organizations for which this is their bread and butter. So I would say go check out Grow Medicine. They're going to help you figure out how to be conscientious about where you're sourcing your medicine from. If you want to make a donation, if you have the means to make a donation, or you're just looking for more education around Indigenous reciprocity, check out Chacruna's Indigenous Reciprocity Initiative. And lastly, please consider signing the North Star Ethics Pledge. And you can Google all of those things. In terms of supporting DoubleBlind, as mentioned, at the end of the day, we really are just here to support people on their journeys with healing and accessing all of the education and community that they need in order to do that. But we're a small business. We're an impact-oriented business. We're women-run, women-led. And, some of the ways you can support us, which also hopefully genuinely support you on your journey as well, would be signing up for a course, considering, taking a workshop or a webinar, becoming a member, which includes access to all of our courses, our breathwork, our cannabis ceremonies, etc., or even just subscribing to the print magazine. We really, many, many millions of people come to our website, which is crazy, but very, very few of them ever decide to subscribe to the magazine or make a purchase that actually ends up going back into enabling us to do all of that free reporting and free journalism on our website. So.
That's great, Shelby. I know you have to go, so what I'll do here for a little bit is just scroll through some of the other things that you've got going on here. And if there's any final words that you have to say, you can. I'll just scroll. When you gotta go.
No, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone for listening. Feel free to reach out to us on Instagram. Feel free to reach out to us via email. We really want to support people on their journeys with psychedelics, and hopefully we'll see you at an in-person event sometime this year.
I love your guys' just attitudes and everything. I think you're wonderful.
You can buy some boxer briefs that say "On Shrooms, having a great time on the ass" if those call to you. Those were designed by my best friend David Good, who also designs the print magazine. We don't actually make that much money on those, but we just thought they were hilarious. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you too. Bye, Shelby. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, my name is Shelby Hartman. I'm DoubleBlind's co-founder and editor-in-chief, and today we're going to talk about machine elves. What the heck is a machine elf? If you've done DMT or are thinking about doing DMT, you may have heard about them. And basically, they're little beings or entities that people often see when they're under the influence of DMT. I know it sounds totally crazy, but it's a thing that actually happens, so let's talk about it. But before we talk about machine elves, we got to give you a little bit of context about DMT. So DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, is a powerful and fast-acting hallucinogen produced naturally by many plants and animals, humans included. DMT is endogenous. So that means, yes, DMT is actually found in the brains of mammals. People often refer to DMT as, quote, the businessman's trip because it lasts about 15 minutes. And in that 15 minutes, it can inspire a bombardment of visuals that begin with a snow of overwhelming shapes, colors, peaks, and if you're lucky, entry into another realm. Actually stepping into what feels like a completely different world. Doing DMT can be a very intense experience where you lose all perception of space and time, even a sense of self. There's a reason why DMT has earned its nickname, quote, the spirit molecule. For some, DMT may only inspire intense and awesome visuals, but many who try it also are looking out for something, or rather someone specific, spirits. So seeing DMT entities or experiencing some kind of presence is a common experience for those who cross a certain dosage on DMT. Terence McKenna, who was a legendary psychedelic activist and second wave pioneer, said these entities were best described as, quote, self-transforming elf machines. McKenna was one of the first and loudest activists to speak openly about his many DMT experiences. And he said in a recorded interview, quote, I encounter self-transforming elf machines, which are creatures, entities perhaps, although they're not made out of matter. They're made out of, as nearly as I can figure it out, syntax-driving light. Yeah, that's what he said. By syntax, McKenna really does mean language. And he continued, they use a language which you see. It is made out of sound, it is sound, but you see it. And the entire point of the encounter from their perspective is to teach you to do this. The DMT experience is distinct from other classic psychedelic experiences, such as LSD and psilocybin mushrooms. But one thing that I'll say that's similar is that it can lead to something called synesthesia, which is essentially where you can see sound or hear color. There's like a communication that is happening between your senses that normally does not. So why are these entities called, quote, machine elves? The answer to this question is simple. They're called machine elves, or also sometimes clockwork elves, because it's the terminology that McKenna used. And McKenna's openness and honesty about his personal experiences on DMT created a pathway that others could eventually use to describe and interpret their own psychedelic experiences on DMT. Through his description of, quote, machine elves, McKenna donated trip terminology that has been widely adopted by psychonauts who follow in his footsteps. But as mentioned, machine elves are not unique to McKenna. Many people who try DMT relate to the features that he described in his trips: geometric shapes, visualized speech, beings, vibrant colors, and sparkling ethereal light are all things that happen to a lot of people when they're on DMT. And yet, that's not always the case. Many people may not even remember what happens to them on DMT when they wake up from their experience. So what do machine elves look like? Forget images of gears, steam, computers, and engine parts. For some people, machine elves can be really different from the robotic and mechanized creations we commonly see in sci-fi space movies, for example. DMT spirits can be fractal, or they can be humanoids, animals, faces, or aliens. They can also just be a voice, or simply the feeling of a presence, or anything else the mind can conjure up. The diversity of DMT hallucinations was reported early on by the legendary psychedelic researcher Dr. Rick Strassman, who you also might know of from his book, DMT, the Spirit Molecule. Strassman has been investigating DMT experiences for decades, and he told DoubleBlind, quote, "Not that many people in their study saw elves, but many people did see beings possessing other shapes and forms." Strassman's findings were confirmed by more recent research. In 2018, a small study of DMT users found that more often than not, when consumers did see, quote, DMT elves, they did not look like elves at all. So if you're thinking you're gonna do DMT and see like Santa's elves, that's probably not what's gonna happen. Rather, most entities appeared more amorphous and hard to describe. So the study was performed by Jennifer Like, who's a professor of psychology at Stockton University, and she surveyed people from the site Airwood for common descriptions of DMT deities. And also in a much larger study published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology, a research team led by Alan Davis, who we just had on DoubleBlind, gathered and analyzed survey data from a grand total of 2,561 different DMT consumers about their best experiences with the psychedelic. In the study, only 10 to 16% of people used terms like, quote, angel or elf to describe DMT entities. Instead, words like, quote, being and guide were a lot more common. So what do DMT elves do? In other words, should you want to be having this experience? It's worth noting that when people experience what's often referred to as a mystical experience, spiritual qualities of a psychedelic trip, whether it's on DMT or some other psychedelic, oftentimes these are the most impactful parts of the experience. And Strassman talks about this. He says, quote, the function of the beings is to communicate. And what they communicate is information. Their shape or form may contain that information, but more importantly, there is an exchange, a relationship between the observer and the beings, sometimes verbal, sometimes nonverbal. Then it's up to our mind, our intellect, to decipher the communication, to extract meaning from it. Meaning that it's not about what the DMT elves look like, whether they look like Santa's elves or they're some amorphous creature that you never could have conceived of before you're on DMT. What matters is that oftentimes in these kind of spirit realms, these beings are there to communicate something to you that actually could end up being really meaningful in your everyday life. According to Davis's study, most people interact with DMT spirits via emotional, intuitive, and telepathic means. These clockwork elves often feel real, like the arbiters of a deep and hidden truth, and many people report that experiencing them is a hallmark of a life-changing experience. with a notable impact on their mood, their well-being, and their overall outlook on life. In Davis's study, an amazing amount of the psychonauts reported feelings of love, trust, kindness, and joy coming from themselves and these perceived spirit entities. And a large majority of people also reported that they felt like the entities had intelligence, a consciousness of their own. Most people also felt that they were sacred and that they existed in their own world and they had a message to deliver. Again, I know this might all sound a little bit kooky, but, you know, the psychedelic experience in and of itself is inexplicable, and there's still so much that we don't understand about why it is that people go into psychedelic experiences, they see things or they feel things or they hear things that they can't wrap their minds around, and then they emerge out the other end feeling like they've received a lot of healing from their internal distress. Now, it goes without saying that not everybody is going to have a positive DMT experience. Every single trip is different. Every single person is different. And a good number of people may also not enter this, quote, spiritual realm. It's also not a guarantee that you're going to experience DMT entities, or if you do, that they're going to have anything meaningful to say to you. So for a lot of people, DMT hallucinations can actually be really scary. During Davis's survey, 41% of people felt fear during their experience. 23% reported that they felt the beings had an authoritative presence, and 16% actually felt negatively judged by the beings, while 11% felt that these beings were malicious. Why exactly these entities are a common experience when on DMT is still a complete mystery. But after decades of research, Rick Strassman was able to provide some insight, telling DoubleBlind, quote, "People can only imagine things that they have already seen or experienced." Hi, I'm Shelby Hartman, DoubleBlind's co-founder and editor-in-chief, and I'm here to talk to you about shroom dosage. One of the trickiest things about shroom dosage is that there are more than 180 different kinds of psilocybin-containing mushrooms. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that there's a difference between shroom species and shroom strains. For example, Psilocybe cubensis is the most popular shroom species. Underneath Psilocybe cubensis, we have a variety of shroom strains that are also popular for cultivating at home, such as Golden Teachers, Penis Envy, and B+. In addition to there being a number of popular psilocybin strains which fall under Psilocybe cubensis, there are also many, many different kinds of psilocybin species, including Psilocybe semilanceata, known as Liberty caps, and Psilocybe cyanescens, known as wavy caps. We write about some of the most popular ones on our website if you're interested. When we're talking about shroom dosage, obviously the biggest question is, okay, well, how potent are my shrooms? And there isn't a lot of information out there on the potency of different kinds of mushrooms. Psilocybe azurensis are widely known as being one of the most potent psilocybin-containing mushrooms. Mycologist Paul Stamets has written about this in his book. Under sort of the umbrella of Psilocybe cubensis, a lot of growers believe that Penis Envy or albino Penis Envy is one of the most potent strains. But the reality is that even though there's sort of myth and lore about the strength of these different strains and species, even if some of that is true, and I'm sure some of it is, no batch of a strain or species is going to be the same potency as another batch of that exact same strain or species, because it depends on where it was grown, how it was grown. Even two mushrooms that are growing next to each other in the same tub can have varying levels of potency. And also, a lot of people believe that the caps in the psilocybin mushrooms are more potent than the stems. And there was one study that was done that found that that was true. And so, if you have a mushroom and the cap is like this big, and then you have another mushroom and the stem is super long and the cap is super tiny, then the potencies are going to be different. So I just have to give kind of all of that as a disclaimer before we get into shroom dosage. Now you might be asking, okay, if I have no idea what the potency of my mushrooms are, then how am I supposed to figure out how many of them to take? And it's a tricky question. Really, most people do this by trial and error in the psychedelic community. We have an adage that says, start low and go slow. So if you are taking some mushrooms that you bought from a person who knew a person and they didn't give you any reliable information about how strong these mushrooms are, then you're going to want to be really careful about how much you take, especially if it's your first time tripping. Now let's talk about some numbers. Bear in mind that, as mentioned before, the most common species of psilocybin mushrooms are Psilocybe cubensis. So when we talk about these dosages in the psychedelic community, we are assuming that you are taking Psilocybe cubensis. Again, that could be golden teachers, penis envy, V+. There's a variety of strains that are Psilocybe cubensis, but just know that. A microdose is typically between 0.1 and 0.5 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms. A low dose is between 0.5 grams and 2 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms. A moderate dose is between 2 grams and 3.5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. And a high dose, or what we sometimes refer to as a heroic dose, is 3.5 to 5 grams and anything above that. We get into this more in our microdosing course, which we just released and which literally goes through everything you could ever possibly need to know if you're interested in microdosing. But just to give a little bit more context on that now, if you are looking to microdose psilocybin mushrooms, 0.5 grams is kind of a lot. I mean, if I do 0.5 grams, I am not able to go about my normal day, which when we talk about microdosing, we're really referring to what Dr. James Fadiman calls a subperceptual dose. You don't want anything to be happening that is noticeably trippy. And if you are, then that's not a microdose. So I would say somewhere between 0.1 and 0.3 grams is probably going to be your sweet spot. I would start around 0.1 grams. If you're really nervous, you could even go a little lower than that. If you're looking to have a trip, then you're probably going to want to start around a gram. Again, if you're really nervous, there's no harm in starting lower than that. You can start at 0.5 grams and take a little more after 90 minutes or 2 hours if you feel like you're not having the kind of experience that you want to be having. But I would just caution people against taking too little mushrooms as much as I would caution them against taking too many mushrooms, because it can be a little bit uncomfortable to be in that liminal space where you're not microdosing. It's not just elevating your mood. You're actually sensing shifts in your environment, but you're also not quite reaching into that other realm of consciousness that's going to give you the experience that you're really wanting. If what you're looking for is to experience what people talk about when they talk about tripping, which is you're having, realizations about your life, your perception is shifting in a significant way. If you're looking to have what researchers often call the mystical experience, which is often described as this deep sense of unity with other people, with the greater universe. Sometimes people describe it as ineffable, which ironically means it can't be described in words.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? people advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
We are people